I heard him say, "I love you," at 2:47 in the morning, and I knew immediately it wasn't meant for me. The baby monitor sat on my nightstand, its green light steady in the darkness. Our daughter had been sleeping through the night for months. I kept it there anyway. Some habits outlive their purpose. The voice coming through wasn't crying. It was his, low and soft, the way he used to speak to me in the first year we were married, before exhaustion became our shared language. "I love you," he said again. "I can't stop thinking about you." The words traveled through static and arrived in our bedroom perfectly clear. I didn't move. My body understood before my mind did. My heart rate changed first, then my breathing. The ceiling fan turned above me, the same 3 clicks on each rotation it had made for years. His side of the bed was empty, still warm. Downstairs, I could hear the creak of the office chair, the one that needed oil. He'd said he was finishing a work email. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears. One small truth at a time. 6 months earlier, we'd been standing in the kitchen after dinner, and he'd told me I looked tired. Not unkindly. He was washing dishes, I was wiping down the counter, and our daughter was playing with wooden blocks in the next room. The sound of them clicking together punctuated our silence. I told him I was fine, and he'd nodded, soap suds sliding down his forearms. We'd stopped looking at each other when we spoke. I didn't know when that started. We'd been married 8 years. We had a daughter, a mortgage, a vegetable garden that I maintained alone each summer while he worked late. We had a shared calendar, a joint bank account, and a collection of photographs that proved we'd once been happy. The wedding album still sat on the bookshelf in the living room, though neither of us had opened it in years. We were good at the mechanics of life together. Grocery lists, dental appointments, the rotation of clean sheets every Sunday, the careful choreography of 2 people sharing space without truly occupying it together. He still kissed me goodbye each morning, still texted me around noon to ask if I'd eaten lunch, still called me hon, in that abbreviated way that might have been affection or might have been habit. I couldn't tell anymore. When you live with someone long enough, you stop questioning whether they mean what they say. You just trust that meaning is still there, buried somewhere beneath routine. Our friends thought we were solid. At barbecues and birthday parties, we stood together, his hand occasionally finding the small of my back. We finished each other's sentences. We had inside jokes that made other couples smile knowingly, as if we possessed some secret to making marriage work. And maybe we did work, in the way machines work, efficiently and without passion, performing the functions we were designed for. But there were small things, small enough that I told myself they didn't matter. He changed his phone passcode without mentioning it. When I asked, he said it was for work security, something about new protocols. He'd started showering at night instead of morning. He bought new cologne, something darker than what he used to wear. When I commented on it, he shrugged and said the old bottle was empty. These were facts I cataloged without examining, the way you might notice a crack in the ceiling but never think to check the foundation. He was kinder to me than he'd been in years, more patient. He'd started doing the laundry without being asked, folding my clothes with a care that should have felt loving, but instead felt like apology. He brought home flowers on random Tuesdays. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. I told myself we were entering a new phase, that marriages evolved, that perhaps we'd weathered the difficult years and were finding our way back to each other. I didn't know then that guilt could look like love, that someone trying to balance scales could appear devoted while betraying you. I sat in bed for 20 minutes after hearing his voice through the monitor, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. Maybe he was on the phone with his mother. Maybe he was watching something on his laptop. Maybe I was still half asleep and had imagined the tenderness in his voice. That specific softness that only exists between 2 people who've decided to choose each other. But I knew. The way you know when a room's temperature drops, when something fundamental in the air has changed. I'd known for weeks, maybe months. I just hadn't let myself see it. The digital clock on my nightstand blinked forward. 2:48. 2:49. Each minute felt enormous, a chasm I had to cross. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel it in my throat, behind my eyes. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the comforter, willing them still. The fabric was cool beneath my palms. We'd bought this bedding together 3 years ago, spent an hour in the department store, debating thread count like it mattered, like the sheets we slept on could somehow improve the quality of our rest. I got up. The hallway was dark except for the nightlight near our daughter's room, a small turtle that projected green stars across the ceiling. I stopped at her door first, looked in at her sleeping form. She was 4 years old. She had his eyes, my stubborn chin, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, her small fist curled near her face, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd named Pancake for reasons only a child could understand. She looked so peaceful, so untouched by the adult chaos that swirled around her while she slept. I wanted to protect her from what I was about to learn, even though she'd never know this moment existed, even though the destruction of our family would happen quietly, in whispers and careful explanations, in 2 bedrooms instead of 1 shared home. She would grow up knowing her parents were separated, but she wouldn't know this exact moment, the instant when everything split apart. The stairs didn't creak. I'd learned over years of late-night feedings which boards to avoid. 3rd step from the top, 7th from the bottom, the landing that groaned if you put weight on the left side. At the bottom, I could see the light under the office door. Faint, just the desk lamp, probably. I stood in the living room, in the space between the stairs and his closed door, and I realized I was afraid. Not of what I'd find, I already knew, but of what would happen after. The moment I opened that door, our life would split into before and after. Even if I was wrong, even if there was an innocent explanation, the fact that I suspected him meant something between us had already broken. Trust, once cracked, never quite seals the same way. You can glue it back together, but you'll always see the seams. I opened the door anyway. He was sitting at the desk, his back to me, laptop open. The screen's glow illuminated his face and profile. He was smiling. I hadn't seen him smile like that in so long, I'd forgotten what it looked like. Unguarded, boyish, the smile of someone who still believed in joy. His phone was pressed to his ear. He was leaning forward slightly, intimate, like the person on the other end was right there in the room with him instead of miles away. He didn't hear me at first. I heard him say, "I wish you were here." Then he laughed, quietly, at something she said. A laugh I used to know. A laugh I thought belonged to us, to the early days when everything was easy and we stayed up too late talking about nothing and everything. I said his name. He turned. The smile died instantly, replaced by something I'd never seen on his face before. Pure fear. He stood up too quickly, the chair rolling backward and hitting the wall. His phone dropped from his hand onto the desk, and I could hear a voice coming from it, tinny and distant. A woman's voice saying his name, asking if he was still there. "How long have you been standing there?" he asked. "Long enough." My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. Proud that I could sound calm while everything inside me was collapsing. The baby monitor sat on his desk beside a cold mug of coffee, beside a stack of papers I recognized as work documents, beside the small, framed photo of the 3 of us from last summer at the beach. Our daughter building sandcastles, me laughing at something off camera, him with his arm around my shoulders. We looked happy. Maybe we had been, in that moment. Or maybe we'd just been good at pretending. He'd forgotten to turn the monitor off. I watched him realize this, watched him understand that I'd heard everything because of a small, green box designed to carry a child's cries from one room to another. It would have been funny if it weren't destroying us. The tool we'd bought to keep our daughter safe had instead revealed the truth that would break our family apart. "Let me explain," he said. "Don't," I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear you explain. I don't want excuses or context or reasons. I want you to tell me if you love her." The silence lasted 3 seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds, I thought about every possible answer. I thought about what I'd do if he said no, if he told me it was just physical, just a mistake, just something that meant nothing. I thought about what I'd do if he said yes. I didn't know which answer I was hoping for. Yes. One word, clean and sharp as a blade. I nodded, sat down on the couch across from where he stood, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. The couch where we'd watched countless movies, where we'd assembled baby furniture at midnight, where we'd fallen asleep tangled together in the early years when we couldn't bear to be apart even for the length of a film. My legs had stopped working properly. He stayed by the desk, one hand braced against it, like he might fall. Neither of us cried. We'd moved past the place where tears lived. "How long?" I asked. 4 months. 4 months. A third of a year. An entire season of lies. I thought about the last 4 months, tried to pinpoint when it started. Was it before the flowers? before the extra kindness? Had he already been with her when he held me after my father died? When he rubbed my back and told me everything would be okay? Had he been thinking of her while making love to me? The thought made my stomach turn. Do you love me? Another pause, longer this time. I watched him struggle with the answer, saw him weighing truth against kindness. I almost told him not to answer, that silence would be better than whatever he was about to say. I don't know, he said finally. I'm so sorry, I don't know. I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed he was telling the truth. He didn't know, and neither did I anymore. When had we stopped being certain about each other? When had love become a question instead of an answer? After that night, the house became a stage where we performed normalcy. We made breakfast together. We took turns reading bedtime stories to our daughter. We still divided chores, still paid bills, still attended parent-teacher conferences and smiled at neighbors who asked how we were doing. Great, we'd say. Really good. And they'd believe us because people always do, because no one looks closely enough at other people's marriages to see the rot beneath the surface. But we stopped touching. We moved through rooms like ghosts occupying the same space, careful never to collide. If he reached for a dish from the cabinet and I was nearby, I'd step back, creating distance. If I walked through a doorway and he was coming through the other direction, we'd do an awkward dance of avoidance. Our daughter noticed. I saw her watching us with a confusion she was too young to articulate. Once, she asked why Daddy didn't hug Mommy anymore. I told her Mommy and Daddy were both very tired. She accepted this the way children accept all adult explanations, with trust that would eventually be betrayed. He slept in the guest room without me asking him to. The first night, he gathered his pillow and walked down the hall without a word. I listened to the door close, then lay in our bed, my bed now, and stared at the ceiling. The room felt bigger, colder. I pulled his pillow toward me, caught the scent of his shampoo, then threw it on the floor. It stayed there for 3 days before I finally put it in the closet. I'd wake at odd hours and find him in the kitchen at 5 a.m, already dressed, staring at his phone. The blue light made his face look hollow, unfamiliar. I never asked who he was texting. He never offered to tell me. We'd pour coffee in silence, the machine's gurgle the only sound between us. Sometimes our daughter would wake early and find us like this, separate, silent, strangers, and she'd climb into my lap and ask for pancakes, and we'd snap into our roles. Smiling parents, functional family. Everything's fine. I started noticing everything. How many hours passed between when he said he left work and when he arrived home? The way he angled his phone away from me when notifications appeared. The receipts I found for restaurants we'd never been to together, coffee shops in parts of town he had no reason to visit. I found a receipt once for dinner at the Italian place downtown, the expensive one we'd always said we'd try for our anniversary but never did. The bill was for 2 people, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, tiramisu to share. Dated 3 weeks before I heard his voice through the monitor. Each piece of evidence felt like a betrayal, but also like proof I wasn't crazy. I'd started doubting my own perceptions, wondering if I was paranoid, if the distance between us was imagined. The receipts, the texts, the changed passwords, they validated my suspicions. The truth was both validating and destroying me simultaneously. Some nights I'd lie in bed and try to remember the last time we'd been happy. Really happy, not just functioning. Not just performing happiness for our daughter or our friends or ourselves. I couldn't pinpoint it. That felt significant. That love could fade so gradually you didn't notice until you turned around and it was gone. Like watching a plant die over months, each day's change, too subtle to alarm you, until suddenly you're holding nothing but brown leaves and wondering when it happened. I tried to remember what it felt like in the beginning, when we first met at that coffee shop 9 years ago. He'd been reading a book I loved, and I'd commented on it, and we'd talked for 3 hours straight. He'd made me laugh so hard I snorted coffee through my nose. He'd called me the next day, and the next, and the next. We'd fallen fast and hard, the way young people do when they still believe love conquers everything. Where had that gone? When did we stop talking for hours? When did we stop laughing? When did we become 2 people who shared a space, but not a life? My sister called one evening while I was folding laundry. She asked how I was doing, and I almost told her. The words were right there, assembled and ready. My husband is having an affair. I heard him tell her he loves her. I'm dying slowly in a house that used to be a home. Instead, I said, Fine, tired. You know how it is. She did know. She'd been through her own divorce 3 years earlier. Her husband had left her for a coworker, moved out while she was at work one day, took half the furniture and all of her confidence. Maybe she heard something in my voice, because she got quiet for a moment before asking, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I lied. After we hung up, I held one of his shirts and realized I'd been folding it on autopilot, creasing the sleeves the way he liked. Muscle memory is cruel that way. Your hands remember love long after your heart has forgotten how it felt. I stared at the shirt. A blue button-down he wore to the office, probably wore when meeting her for lunch, maybe wore on one of their dates while I was home with our daughter watching cartoons and eating leftover mac and cheese. I threw it across the room. Then I picked it up, folded it properly, and put it in his drawer. I didn't know what else to do. The confrontation came 6 weeks later, in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning. Our daughter was at preschool, he'd stayed home, said he had calls to make from the house. I'd taken the day off work, told my boss I had a doctor's appointment. In truth, I couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep performing this exhausting charade of normalcy. Something had to break. I found him pouring coffee into the mug I'd given him for our 5th anniversary, the one that said, "World's okayest husband," because we'd still had a sense of humor about our imperfections back then. We'd still been able to laugh at ourselves, at the mundane reality of marriage, at the way we'd become boring and domestic and perfectly content with it. "I need to know what we're doing," I said. He set the mug down carefully, looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't think he'd been sleeping either. The skin beneath them looked bruised, purple-gray. He'd lost weight. His wedding ring hung looser on his finger. I noticed these things clinically, the way you might observe a stranger. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Don't do that. Don't make this my decision. You're the one who—" I stopped, took a breath, started again. "Do you want to leave?" The coffee maker beeped. Neither of us moved. "Sometimes," he said. "And sometimes I want to fix this. I don't know how to live in both futures at once." "You can't," I said. "That's not how it works. You chose her every time you lied to me. You chose her every time you came home and pretended everything was fine. Every dinner we ate together, every night you kissed me goodnight, every morning you said you loved me, those were all choices, and you chose her. I never stopped caring about you." Caring isn't the same as love, and it's definitely not the same as faithfulness. He picked up the mug, set it down again without drinking. His hands were shaking slightly. "She makes me feel like myself again. Like the version of me that existed before responsibilities and schedules and exhaustion. Before I became just a paycheck and a lawnmower and someone who's too tired for sex. I know that's not fair to you. I know none of this is fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But you know what else isn't fair? You get to feel alive again while I feel like I'm dying. You get a new relationship, that exciting beginning phase where everything is perfect and easy, while I get to stay here in the rubble of what we built and figure out how to explain to our daughter why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. You get to run toward something while I'm left behind holding everything together." "I'm sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo it. Sorry doesn't make me unhear you telling someone else you love them. Sorry doesn't give me back the last 4 months of believing we were okay, of seeing you bring home flowers and thinking we were getting better when really you were just guilty. Sorry doesn't make me forget that you touched me while thinking of her." He flinched at that. Good. I wanted him to hurt. A car passed outside. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked forward, indifferent to our ending. "I think you should move out," I said. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't fight for us or beg for another chance or promise to end it with her. That told me everything I needed to know. He'd already imagined leaving. He'd already measured the space between here and somewhere else and found it crossable. Maybe he'd already looked at apartments. Maybe he'd already told her he was leaving me. Maybe they'd already planned their future while I was still trying to salvage our past. "When?" he asked. "Soon, this week. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to pretend for our daughter that everything's fine when she can clearly see it isn't. I don't want to lie awake at night wondering where you are or who you're talking to. I don't want to live in this limbo anymore." "I'll tell her together," he said, meaning our daughter, our beautiful, perfect daughter who thought her father hung the moon. "No," I said. "I'll tell her. You've done enough." He moved out 3 days later, took his clothes, his books, the desk from the office, half the furniture from the guest room. He was methodical about it, making lists, labeling boxes, trying to be fair about the division of our shared life. I watched from the bedroom window as he loaded boxes into his car, back and forth, each trip removing another piece of our history. Our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watched too from her porch. She'd probably call later, asking if everything was all right. I'd tell her we needed space. She'd nod knowingly, say something about marriage, being hard work, never quite acknowledging that ours had stopped working altogether. Our daughter was at my mother's house. I told her Daddy was taking some things to storage, that our house was too crowded. She'd asked if that meant she could finally get a puppy, since we'd have more room now. The innocence of it had made me want to scream. After he left, I walked through the house, cataloging absence. The empty space where his shoes used to sit by the door, the missing toothbrush in the bathroom, the gap in the bookshelf where his collection of mystery novels had been. The closet with his clothes gone, wire hangers clicking emptily together. Each missing piece was both a relief and a wound. I sat on the couch, the one we'd bought together, argued over the color, finally compromised on gray because it was neutral and practical. I sat in the spot that had been mine for years, looked at his empty spot, and finally cried. Not delicate tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. I cried for the marriage we'd had. I cried for the future we'd planned and would never live. I cried for our daughter, who would grow up in 2 houses instead of 1. I cried for myself, for the woman I'd been who trusted completely and would never trust that way again. When I was done, I washed my face, picked up my daughter from my mother's house, and told her as gently as I could that Daddy was going to be living somewhere else for a while. She took it better than I expected. Asked a few questions. Could she still see him? Did he still love her? Was it her fault? I assured her on all counts. Yes, of course she'd see him. Yes, he loved her more than anything. No, it was absolutely not her fault. These were the truths. The lies were in what I didn't say, that her father had betrayed us, that love wasn't always enough, that families could break even when everyone had promised they wouldn't. The weeks after he left were the quietest of my life. I'd expected chaos, tears, rage, sleepless nights staring at the ceiling. Instead, there was just silence. The house felt larger. Sounds echoed differently. I could hear every creak and settle, every mechanical hum that had been there all along, but drowned out by the noise of 2 lives overlapping. The refrigerator's buzz, the water heater's occasional rumble, the settling of floorboards as temperature changed. The house itself seemed to be adjusting to his absence, learning new rhythms. Our daughter asked where Daddy was constantly those first few weeks. At dinner, she'd set out 3 plates before remembering. At bedtime, she'd ask if Daddy was going to say goodnight. On Saturday mornings, she'd wake up asking if he was making pancakes because Saturday pancakes had been his thing. Each time, I'd gently remind her that Daddy lived somewhere else now, but he still loved her very much. She accepted this with the resilience of a 4-year-old, then moved on to the next question or request. Children, adapt. It's both miraculous and heartbreaking. I started reorganizing everything, moved furniture around, trying different configurations until the house felt less like his absence and more like my space. I threw out his cologne when I found it in the bathroom cabinet, the bottle 3/4 full, the scent that had made me suspicious now making me nauseous. I deleted photos from my phone, not all of them, just the recent ones where our smiles looked rehearsed, where you could see the distance in our eyes if you looked closely enough. I kept the old ones, from when we were young and stupidly confident that love was enough. Maybe it had been once. Maybe we'd just forgotten how to tend it. I painted our bedroom, chose a color he would have hated, a deep teal that felt bold and mine. I painted over the neutral beige we'd selected together, the compromise color that offended no one and inspired no one. With each brushstroke, I felt like I was reclaiming something. The room transformed over a weekend, and when I was done, it looked nothing like the space where we'd slept together for years. It looked like a fresh start. Friends reached out, having heard through the small-town network that processes bad news like a living thing. They offered coffee, offered to watch my daughter, offered platitudes about time and healing and how I was better off without him. I accepted the practical help and declined the rest. I wasn't ready to talk about it, wasn't ready to hear that I'd be fine, that I deserved better, that everything happens for a reason. I didn't want reasons. I wanted to sit in the ruins for a while and take inventory of what remained. My sister came over one evening with wine and takeout. We sat on the porch while my daughter played in the yard, chasing fireflies with a jar. "I knew something was wrong," my sister said. "Last time I called, you sounded different." I didn't want to tell anyone, I admitted. Like saying it out loud would make it real. It was already real. I know. But there's a difference between knowing something privately and having other people know it too. Once I told you, or Mom, or anyone, it became a fact instead of a secret. It became part of my story, the thing people would think about when they thought about me. Oh, her husband cheated. Oh, her marriage fell apart. I didn't want to be that person yet. And now? Now I don't have a choice. We sat in silence for a while, watching my daughter. She was laughing, joyful, unburdened. I envied her innocence. "Does she know?" my sister asked. "The specifics, I mean." "No, she knows we're separated. She doesn't need to know why. Maybe when she's older. Maybe never. I haven't decided." "What about him? Does he get to just move on? No consequences?" I shrugged. "He lost his family. That's consequence enough." But I wondered if it was. He got the excitement of a new relationship while I got the exhausting work of rebuilding. He got to feel alive and desired while I felt discarded and broken. The scales didn't feel balanced. At night, I'd walk through the house and notice absence everywhere. One toothbrush in the holder instead of two. One set of keys on the hook instead of two. The half of the closet that slowly filled with my clothes, expanding into his abandoned space. I removed my wedding ring on a Thursday evening, 3 months after he moved out. I'd been washing dishes and caught sight of it, the gold band I'd worn for 8 years. And suddenly it felt wrong. Heavy, dishonest. I dried my hands and worked it off my finger. It stuck a little. I'd gained weight since the wedding, or maybe my fingers had just swollen with age and use. When it finally came off, there was a pale line underneath, a band of skin that hadn't seen sun in nearly a decade. I stared at it, this evidence of commitment, and wondered how long it would take for the line to fade. I set the ring in the small jewelry box on my dresser, beside the pearl earrings my grandmother left me when she died. It felt appropriate somehow, putting love away with the other things I'd inherited and no longer used, beautiful things from another time that didn't fit my life anymore. My hand looked strange without it, naked, wrong. For days I'd catch myself twisting my bare finger, reaching for a ring that wasn't there. Another muscle memory to unlearn. Looking back now, almost a year later, I can see the fractures were always there. We'd built our marriage on a foundation of compatibility and hope, but somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being curious about each other, stopped asking questions that mattered. We'd become efficient partners, excellent co-parents, but we'd forgotten to be lovers, to be friends, to be people who chose each other every day instead of people who simply stayed because staying was easier than leaving. I don't know if that excuses what he did. I don't think it does. Plenty of marriages lose passion and people don't cheat. Plenty of people feel unfulfilled and they talk about it, go to therapy, work on it, or leave honestly. He chose deception. He chose to have both, the stability of our family and the excitement of her. He chose to let me believe everything was fine while building a separate life I knew nothing about. But I understand it now in a way I couldn't when I first heard his voice through the baby monitor, saying words that should have been mine. I understand that people are complicated, that good people do harmful things, that love and betrayal can exist in the same person at the same time. I understand that our marriage had been dying long before he found someone else. He just pulled the plug instead of trying to revive it. He sees our daughter every weekend now. We exchange her in the parking lot of the public library, a neutral territory we agreed on through lawyers. We're brief and civil. Sometimes he looks at me like he wants to apologize again, and I look away before he can. Some apologies are too heavy to carry. He's said sorry enough times. Another one won't change anything. I've started sleeping on his side of the bed. I don't know why. Maybe because it feels like reclaiming territory, or maybe because the mattress is more worn there, and I've always preferred the way it dips toward the center. Small rebellions matter when you're rebuilding a life. I sleep diagonally sometimes, spread out across space that used to have to accommodate 2 bodies. It's a luxury I never appreciated before. The baby monitor is still on my nightstand. I thought about throwing it away, the device that revealed everything, but our daughter occasionally has nightmares, and I need to hear her call for me. So it stays, silent most nights, but present. A reminder that some things keep their function even after they've betrayed you. Or maybe it's just practical. Not everything has to be symbolic. I've learned to cook for 1.5 instead of 3. I've learned to fix the leaking faucet myself, to reset the router when the internet goes out, to handle all the small tasks he used to do. I've learned that independence comes reluctantly, but it comes. And with it, a strange sort of peace. Not happiness, not yet, but the absence of active pain. The difference between a wound and a scar. I don't hate him. I thought I would, but I don't. Hate requires energy I no longer have. What I feel is more complicated. Grief mixed with relief, anger braided with understanding. He was a good father, a decent man who made a terrible choice. People are capable of both. That's the hardest lesson, that someone can love you and still hurt you, that betrayal doesn't always come from villains. Sometimes I wonder about her, the woman on the other end of the phone that night. I wonder if she knows what she's walking into, the weight of loving someone who's already failed at it once. I wonder if they're happy. I wonder if happiness built on someone else's grief can ever be stable, or if it shifts constantly like a house built on sand. I wonder if he tells her he loves her in the same tone he used with me, if the words mean the same thing, if love can be authentic when it's built on lies. But mostly I don't wonder. Mostly I focus on the life I'm building from what remains. I've started painting again, something I gave up when our daughter was born. My mother watches her one evening a week, and I take a class at the community center. It's mostly retirees and college students, but I don't care. I like the smell of the paint, the focus required, the way I can lose myself in color and texture and forget for a while about everything else. I've made friends with the woman who lives 2 doors down, the one whose husband left her 5 years ago. Her name is Patricia. She's 53, works as a nurse, and has 2 grown sons. We drink wine on her porch on Friday evenings and talk about everything except men. We talk about our jobs, our children, our gardens, the books we're reading. Sometimes we sit in comfortable silence, just being present together. 2 women who understand the specific loneliness of having shared a life with someone and then having to figure out how to live alone. She told me once that it gets easier. Not better, necessarily, but easier. You learn to be your own person again, she said. You remember who you were before him, and you figure out who you are after him, and sometimes those people are more interesting than the woman you were during. The woman who compromised and accommodated and made herself smaller to fit inside a marriage. I'm not there yet. I'm still figuring out who I am without him, but I'm starting to catch glimpses in the teal walls of my bedroom, in the paintings I'm making, in the way I've stopped apologizing for taking up space. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I wake up fine, energized, ready to embrace this new life. And some days I hear a song we used to love, or smell his cologne on a stranger in the grocery store, or find one of his socks in the laundry, and I have to sit down until the grief passes. Those days are getting fewer, further apart, but they still come. Our daughter is thriving. She talks about having 2 houses now like it's an adventure. She has a room at his apartment, decorated the way she wanted with purple walls and glow-in-the-dark stars. He takes her to the park every Saturday, makes pancakes every Sunday morning. He's trying to be present in a way he wasn't before. Guilt is a powerful motivator. She doesn't understand what was lost, and I'm grateful for that. Children should be spared the weight of their parents' failures. Maybe one day I'll tell her the full story, when she's old enough to understand that love is complicated and people are flawed and sometimes the right choice feels terrible. Or maybe I won't. Maybe some truths are mine to carry alone. The house settled into its new rhythms. I learned which sounds meant something was wrong versus which were just the normal creaks and groans of a structure aging. I learned to sleep through the quiet, to find comfort in solitude instead of fear. I learned that loneliness and being alone aren't the same thing. Last week, I was tucking our daughter into bed when she asked if Mommy and Daddy still loved each other. I paused, brushed halfway through her hair, trying to find truth that wouldn't hurt her. We love you, I said. That's what matters. But do you love each other? I set down the brush, pulled her onto my lap. She smelled like the lavender soap we used at bath time, like innocence and trust, like everything I wanted to protect her from knowing. Love is complicated, I told her. Sometimes it changes shape. The way Daddy and I love each other now is different than before, but it doesn't mean it's gone. It just lives in a different place. She considered this seriously, the way children do when trying to understand adult sadness. Okay, she said finally, and hugged me tight later after she was asleep. I stood in the hallway and cried for the first time in months. Not for him, not even for us, but for the version of love we'd promised her. The one where families stayed whole, where people who loved each other didn't break apart. We'd failed at that, and she'd carry it forward somehow, this knowledge that even promises made with good intentions could shatter. But she'd also carry forward resilience, the ability to adapt, the understanding that endings don't always mean disaster, that sometimes they're just transformations. Painful, yes, but survivable. She'd seen me survive. She'd see me rebuild. That had to count for something. The baby monitor still sits on my nightstand. Sometimes, in that space between sleep and waking, I hear his voice again. I love you. And for half a second, I forget it wasn't meant for me. Then I remember, and I breathe, and I let it go a little more each time. I don't know if I'll ever love someone again the way I loved him, completely without reservation, believing that faithfulness was as natural as breathing. Maybe that kind of trust only exists once. Or maybe it's still possible, just different, wiser, built on honesty instead of hope, on reality instead of promise. What I know now is this: love alone isn't enough. You need respect. You need communication. You need honesty and effort and two people willing to fight for the same future. We had love once, but we lost everything else along the way. And by the time we noticed, it was too late to find our way back. Some nights I still sleep on his side of the bed. The mattress dips toward the center, and I let it hold me. The house is quieter now, lonelier, but it's mine. Every silence, every empty space, every small freedom, mine to fill or leave empty as I choose. I'm learning that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the memory without letting it define you. It means acknowledging the wound but not living inside it. It means understanding that what broke you can also teach you how to be whole again, differently than before, but whole nonetheless. I heard him say, "I love you," at 2:47 in the morning, and it taught me that the hardest truths arrive softly, through static in the dark, when you're least prepared to receive them. It taught me that betrayal doesn't always announce itself. It whispers, it creeps, it arrives in the voice of someone you trust, speaking tenderly to someone who isn't you. I never stopped loving him. I just stopped waiting for him to love me back.